Thank you for having me tonight. What I hope to do in the next half an hour is highlight who we are, where we came from and such, why we were invited. I can honestly say that even 3 months ago, I didn't think I would be giving a talk in the gaming community here in St. John's. But hats off to everybody, Greg and Janice and Jason, for all you guys for inviting me, including me. It's been a great opportunity and very rewarding even the last 3 months, which is only in its infancy. And I just want to speak to where I think we're going as a community, and not just as a company. And there's certainly lots of opportunities to explore, and I encourage anybody who's interested in our world to come talk to me after this presentation. So a short history of us, and I'll keep it as short as possible. Some people might know this story, but I'll certainly tailor it to people who don't. We are a St. John's-based company. We're here for a reason. We're part of a community of researchers working on how do we make the world safer and better for people who have to work offshore or have to work in the marine industry and every day face dangers in their lives. We started here 15 years ago on the success of a research project that was founded at the university, studying how lifeboats and small crafts performed in harsh environments. This research was driven by accidents that happened here in Newfoundland, the Ocean Ranger, of course, being one of the more famous ones. And that drove a lot of the research that started initially at the university to how do we make the world better for the offshore workers. We were one of the companies that spun out of the university 15 years ago. And not only did we spin out, we continue to work with the community here, whether it's the university or industry partners and such, the NRC. We're a 20-person company, but we, at any one time, are working with anywhere between 60 and 80 people in this community. And that's quite a big number when you look at what we're trying to do, especially when we have expertise in human factors and ice, harsh environments, course design and such. So our community is very well tailored for us. And we always pride ourselves on what we're built on here in Newfoundland, and that's a safety culture. We know the marine industry, we know the marine world, and we know marine accidents. Myself, I'm from a small town on the southwest coast of Newfoundland. We call it Isle of Mort, I guess the French word, but Ile de Mort, which is Island of the Dead. So even in my own little town, I got a history of disaster. There was a number of shipwrecks off my hometown, the most famous being the Dispatch. And everyone knows, or not everyone, but you may know the Anne Harvey story and such. Well, that's my hometown. The Coast Guard boat was named after that accident. And I'll tell a story after of Anne Harvey and her father and her Newfoundland dog saved over 100 people off the Dispatch back in 1828. If anyone wants to hear that, and then I'll babble a bit all day. But anyway, we're well known in Newfoundland for knowing the water, knowing the dangers of the water, and being crafty enough to bring some pretty unique solutions to the world to make the world safer. And this is really what got us motivated. Training for anyone here who's got family or friends who are working offshore, they know that one of the things that they have to do in the emergency is get off that rig or get off that platform. And currently the way you do it right now is you get in a lifeboat, orange fiberglass boats that you see, and you lower into the water and you sail away. And the way that people are doing training today, or previous to us, you did so in a sheltered harbor, you launch into calm water, do a few little routines, and that's supposed to transfer to these types of situations, which are 8 or 9, 10-meter seas, reduced visibility, hazards, fire, all these wonderful things. And they would certainly created a gap. With the training you get, obviously put in place to keep the safety of the person in mind. You didn't need to get this sort of training. So the marine industry, in terms of safety, hadn't graduated to where the flight industry was, where they were teaching people how to launch a plane with broken landing gear using a simulator. So that was our eureka moment. If we could get people in a lifeboat simulator, we could teach people to do some pretty dangerous things. And that's how our company started. And in effect, even though people are training for calm water and such, the accidents are real. There's Piper Alpha, and what we may know back in '88, 167 people passed on that accident. Recently, Deepwater Horizon, it was real enough that he made a movie out of it. I shouldn't be candid about that because 11 people died in that accident, and there's obviously a huge environmental impact as well. And local to us, the Ocean Ranger went down in '82, and 84 lives went down with it. So these accidents are real. And as you see, if you were someone who had to get off that oil and gas platform, you would have to deal with the fire, the darkness, the increased stress, the hazards that you would have in these types of situations. So our job is to get these people home and get them prepared. So if there was another accident, they knew what to do with. So this, as I already said, this was our first kick at the can of simulation. And we started building lifeboat simulators. The first ones were very crude. If anyone's going, our first game was taking a grassy field, turning it blue, putting a lifeboat on top of a car model, and driving it over this blue hill, and that's what got us our first round of funding to build our first lifeboat simulator. And we got it. We got $15,000, and our $15,000 was quickly turned into $50,000 now. We're several $1 million into that investment, but these are high-fidelity simulators now, and we're using all the same type of technologies used by this community, the unities and the simulation engines and all the wonderful things. And what we have now is a platform for people to get in and practice some very dangerous situations in a controlled environment. All the real controls are there. We can emulate all the real weather environments. And we can put people into situations that they couldn't practice for before. And now we have people running through training programs and spending hours on a simulator. And by the end of their training program, they're picking up people in the water. And that's more practice than they were able to get in land-based facilities, again, due to the risk. I mentioned we were around 15 years. If this map, if I populated it, or if I showed it 5 years ago, this is where we've deployed our simulators. We only had half a dozen here about 5-6 years ago, and now we've got 25 simulators in 8 different countries, or 25 lifeboat simulators alone in 8 different countries, and that's our footprint. And a lot of the work that we had to do as this technology matured was get the simulation accepted by industry. It's not like a game. When you're putting people into training for safety and such, we've got to prove that the simulation is suitable, it's adequate. And we had to go through all the regulatory certifications through DNVGL and such, and as well as to get all the flag states and the geographic jurisdictions to say this is good enough or better than what's available for training right now. And we're very happy to say that we boiled the ocean a bit. We've got pretty much every single jurisdiction in the world saying that you can use simulation right now, and that's what's really expanded our market. That's our biggest success story in terms of simulation, but that's not all we do. We do a number of different types of simulations, starting with these first-person environments or VR environments where you can learn how do you get around an oil and gas platform? What are your egress routes? Where's all the equipment? How do I, what do I do in the event of emergency? And we can put people in a virtual world and set things on fire, and they can practice. And we have right up to more complex simulations with radar and ice and such. So we have ice management simulators, bigger footprint, of course. But this is one of those products where we really incorporated a lot of the expertise here in Newfoundland through our ice models and through our vessel models and such. And the beautiful thing with Newfoundland is ice comes to us, and we don't have to go look for it. So we can study that, and we can look at all its attributes in that. And so we've got probably the most high horsepower ice management simulation in the world because we got all these technical brains embedded in there through the NRC and the other experts in here in Newfoundland. We have fast response craft simulator. We got a VR demo of that in the back if anyone wants to see it after, used by Coast Guards and such to do search and rescue training. I'm going to skip through all of these because if anyone's got any more questions, they can ask me after. But in addition to these types of simulators, we've also we can make them as small as something that works on a desktop or an online environment, to something that works in VR, or we can also make them as big as this. And if you came to our site in St. John's right now, this is what you'd be able to do. You can get in a simulator like that there. This is a free fall lifeboat simulator. So if anybody's seen those, these are just boats that drop when you have to get off an oil rig. And you can get in this one right now. You get about 1.1 G of force, so your stomach actually does come up to your throat. And we can make you sick if we want to. We don't want to do that, but we can. And we encourage anybody who's got interest in to come and see that, come talk to me. We're only too happy to show off these toys that we have, especially since they're being built here in St. John's by people from St. John's. And we're very proud of that. So our world has changed quite a bit. First 5 or 6 years, we were building technology. And most of the work that we were doing in terms of research and development and studies with our academic partners was, how do we get technology working? Once we put that technology in use, we started learning a lot about the people using the technology and the boats that are used and the type of problems people have when they're actually trying to get a lifeboat into a 6 or 7 meter sea, which is one of the cases we study quite a bit. It's a very common weather environment for offshore Newfoundland. People hadn't practiced this stuff before. There was no data or any performance data to say here's how people would perform or what problems they would have and how prepared they were given the amount of training they were actually getting. So this is something we've turned our research and our development over to that side. Now we're putting people in these types of situations. We're seeing how they perform. We're learning a lot about how much training it actually takes to get people to a level of competence where we think they're ready. We're working a lot with our research partners at the Moore University. A couple here tonight. Glad to see you. And they're studying some of the problems that we see is that how much training do people actually need to deem what we would say are to be competent, to be ready, to be in the event that they do have to launch a lifeboat into a 6 meter sea and things are on fire. And we've actually had people get in our simulator, go through a year of training with us, and we put them in an emergency situation, and they said, "I'm not doing that. I'm not doing this emergency. I'm not ready." That's after being in a year-long training program with us, and these are people who are designated as coxswains in programs. So that's another thing we're learning, that people have limitations, the equipment has limitations. We're learning so much about the lifeboats themselves, how simple changes in the design and simple changes in the power of the lifeboat could really increase your chance of success. And things really get more complicated when you start putting in weather environments. These boats aren't designed for performance. They're not high-speed craft. They're heavy. But they're big, just basically big bubbles. With no keel that bounce around, and they take a lot of skill to master. So there's solutions. More training, of course, helps, and also making sure people get representative training. We have seen that if we put people in high stress environments and they're using the real equipment, and we put them in scenarios which are representative of offshore emergencies, they actually get better. That's what we want to see, and that's the gap that we're trying to fill as a company. And this is the common phrase I'm sure you've seen in military training: is train as you fight, and that's the same attitude we want to bring forward to people who are using our simulators. They should be put in the same situation and being able to practice the same things they're actually going to have to do in real life. Okay, so that's a bit about us. That's us in a nutshell. If anybody got any questions, they can talk to me after. We're here tonight, and I guess in all the work that we've been doing in simulation and all the work that's been going on in the gaming community and the arts community, our worlds hadn't really collided until we got together with Janice, got together with Greg, and said, what could we actually do together? And it wasn't hard to figure out how our two worlds overlapped. And simulation and gaming, they're just big brothers or cousins to each other when you look at the applications versus where the technology's used. The applications might be a bit different. And this is why we're so eager and so happy to be working with people now in this community, because there's things we can do to help you, and you can do to help us. And the learning curve back and forth between groups is actually an easy one to overcome. So this is my kick at trying to explain the difference between what we see as games and serious games. For gaming, I'm obviously being very general here. The key is to make people keep playing and make people have fun, or unless it's an educational game, to fall into serious games and whatnot. So we can, as long as we keep the world engaging, adaptive, and the challenge high, people will keep playing with it. But we look to the journey of someone who's going through a simulation exercise, and if this was a hill, you had to climb it and you had to come back down the other side of it. This is their job. What we do in simulations, we put people in situations that they actually may have to do in real life. A lifeboat capstone, for example, is going to have to launch a lifeboat. Well, heaven forbid if you do, but they may have to launch a lifeboat in an emergency. So our job is to give them scenarios which are realistic, stuff that may happen. Put them in a situation where they're actually launching their lifeboat. The boat behaves as their lifeboat behaves. The platform is exactly what the platform they're going to launch from. The operations procedure is exactly the same. And we've got to make sure this is not a game story, this is a real story. But once we get them into a simulation, we want to make sure that the simulation keeps them climbing up the hill, keeps them engaged. It's exciting for them to play. They're learning from it, and this is their preferred way to learn. Because if we get them into a mode where they don't find the game engaging, or they find the game too frustrating or too boring, they'll just get out. But in doing so, what we can do is they walk down the hills, they're going to learn something. So if we put someone into a game and they keep wanting to play that game for 6 or 7 hours a week, at the end of it, they're competent. And that's our ultimate goal, is to get people up and down that hill. And that's the positive learning experience we want to put in place. And there should be nobody's in the room who's going to contest that this is very similar to what you would do in a game. You want people to keep playing, but you also want them to get better at it. Otherwise, it's just I guess I would call it a bad game. And in terms of what we do, when we're talking about designing our simulation scenarios, I'm sure anybody here who's on the gaming community would look at this type of model and say, you guys have this. The DNA is almost 80 or 90% the same. We start with what does the scenario have to do in our gameplay design? What are the objectives? What story are we going to put people? What context we're going to put people in before they start that game? Then we're going to actually get them into the game. We're going to make sure that the models are realistic. We're going to make sure that they're challenged, get feedback on the goals they complete in the game. And there's a path that they have to complete, or if they're doing exploratory learning, there's at least feedback on what they learned through that approach. They can fail and keep repeating all these wonderful things you can do in a simulator. And once they get out, that's where things might be a bit different. They'll get feedback on their performance, but just like in the gaming world, we open up more scenarios to them, but we also give them feedback on how they should perform, and we don't let them go too far without making sure that they have their skill sets in place. So the only layer that's a bit different is the fact that the outcome here has to make sure that they're competent and compliant to their job. So it's not just fun, and really that's just taking what a game would be and turning it into something that's more of a here's what you have to do versus what's cute and fun to do. But I'm sure anyone can relate to this is a game, and we're not contesting that by any means. We work very heavily on immersion, something that we're actually looking at this community right now, seeing how we can work together. So this is what we do at our facility right now is we run a training course. We start with an instructor, we start with a briefing, just like you would in a game. You come in and you give them some backstory, like here's your scenario, you're on an oil and gas platform, it's a 5-meter sea, something just blew up, it's going to sink in 2 minutes, those sorts of things, right? Then what we do is we walk them up to a door. There's a door in our building. Some people here have seen it because they've been to our office. And we open the door and we kick them in. Boop. They're gone into the simulator room. And once they get in there, they're in a simulator. Now, the lights wouldn't be on. You wouldn't be so bright and such. We would darken the lights. We would have the lights, a red emergency light flashing. We would have horns blaring, these sorts of things. The deck of the floor is green for a reason. That's the deck of a ship. And then we get in the simulator, and their job is to save. And we tell them your job is to save the 80 people on board that boat. But our job, so we're trying to get their heart rate up and get them to a point where they're a bit stressed and they're feeling like they actually got a job to do. Then they do their job, and most of the work that we're doing then is making sure that everything in the simulation is realistic and behaves as it should. So this is really our job, is to make sure we get people into situations where they feel they're in an emergency, because that gives them the confidence and the courage and confidence, I guess, when it comes down to competence and confidence, when it comes down to when they actually have to do this type of thing, that they're able to. And anybody who's looking at me and making fun of the stagecraft that we're doing, yeah, great, come help us. We're only too happy to help, or get help. And a lot of things that we're also doing, and you heard some talks on this tonight, there's more talks coming up, is we're working a lot with machine learning and AI to make the simulations better. for the users. We're trying to keep people in their zone. We recognize there's different skill levels. We recognize people learn differently. And our goal is, as you've seen in games and such, we want to keep people in that zone where they don't get bored, they don't get frustrated, and we keep them in a mode where they're continuously engaged and they're gaining competence and skills as they do it. And that's why what we're doing is we're putting in machine learning models and AI models, so we're capturing data on their performance. From there, we see if they're strong or weak with certain skills, and then we tailor the training curriculum to them. And our goal is to get them through this training course as quickly as possible, so they can do more training. And that's why what we do is we either make the simulations more harder, or easier depending on the skill type, or we tune on specific skills. Beautiful thing about simulation is all digital, so we're actually assessing these, and we're getting digital records on everybody. And we can use that as a way to assess people consistently, the exact same way. And then we can also figure what we can do with that data and see where as a community, people are struggling, and develop new training courses or tailor training to those weaknesses. One of the things we're also doing is the more we can automate, the less workload it is for the instructors. So if we put automated tracking or automated scoring into simulations, the instructor can focus more on role playing and coaching, as opposed to doing the actual measurements and assessments. And this is the beautiful thing about simulation and computers. So we're doing a lot in that world. This is probably the single most dorky or geeky thing I've done. I promote geekism, whatever you want to call it. We simulate our simulations when we're doing course design, and we do it through a modified RPG. So what we do when we're developing a new course, we have playing cards for every single task that's in our simulator. So if we develop a scenario where you've got to launch a lifeboat, pick up two people in the water, and navigate by compass, we actually lay out a playing card like a Dungeons and Dragons game or Magic game. I'm probably dating myself now. And then we roll the dice with an Excel sheet on steroids, and basically figure out what we think is going to be the maximum number of tries it's going to take people to complete the full training course. And it is our president, our CEO, is using this tool right now, because he's smile on his face is so big when he's doing it. But this is what we're doing, and we change the probabilities based on how much experience they have, or how much skill they have, or what the difficulty of the weather is, and stuff like that. And before we go on any training course, and this is a lot of what we do a lot of training course development, we have a simulation that basically role plays, and you'd have to see it to see what it's actually like. But we have so many sessions in our back boardroom where there's actually people with dice rolling it to see what we're going to get, and then we plug the inputs into a computer. So we're probably a level above the level of dorkiness that we need, but we're proud of it. And our journey brought us here. So someone thought it was a good idea for us to be here tonight, and we think it is too. And this is really what we want to talk to this community about. There's lots of opportunity. There's obviously lots of overlap in our world, and there's certainly lots of opportunities to collaborate. And Janice spoke of one. We recently had six students from the College of North Atlantic come and do their capstone project with us, and we think it was a great experience because it was a first experience. So there's things we learned about each other that we'll do better with next time. But the fact is, we found it valuable because we saw how they could help us. We're an engineering group, and we are a very creative engineering company. A lot of our team is very artistic, but a lot of our team is not. Hands up here. And anything we can do to bring in the artistic talent and the game design talent to help us look better, that's great for us. Anything from making our graphics better to giving us ideas on how we can make our game design better, doing quality testing on our things, on our scenarios, and that was a lot of the work that was done with the College of North Atlantic students. It's fantastic for us to involve you guys. It's fantastic for us to have that help. And if you guys think there's other things that you've seen here today that you think you can help us with, or there's opportunity for you, come talk to us, please. We're only too happy. We're very proud of just the community of expertise here in St. John's, and we think there's lots of opportunities to collaborate on a number of different initiatives, and we're highly supportive of any We've been told we're nice guys. I don't know who said that, but meant it. But we've been told that we're very receptive to doing things differently and out of the norm. And we're only too happy to hear if you guys have ideas where you think you can help, or opportunities where you think we can help you. Come talk to us. It's anybody who gets to know our team knows they're very quirky, they're very engaging, and that's where we want to be. But another thing we want to do is make sure the community's talent is shown worldwide. I mentioned earlier that we're taking all the good technical expertise we have here in St. John's and Harris environments and bringing that out to the world. Our international clients love working with us, and they absolutely love coming to Newfoundland because they're dealing with the Newfoundland people, Newfoundland culture, and they always feel like we got that feedback so many times, that this is a community of expertise that is not tapped yet, not known about, and we're going to do our best to promote that worldwide. One of the initiatives we are starting right now, I might have talked to a few guys about it, is the START initiative. Basically what we're doing is we're looking for any opportunity to collaborate with anybody in this community. We have a site, our office has 8 simulators, some of which I showed in this presentation. If anything sparked in your brain today about how you think you could get involved with either doing demonstrations in those simulators, doing research projects, using our simulators to help drive your product, come talk to us. And we're only too happy to offer time and support with the facilities we have here and get them used and get them help grow this community of expertise here. Because as a community, if we all get better, we will find more ways to just grow. And this is an easy one for us. Why are we actually doing this? And this is Joe. I can't use his real name. That just shows my creativity. He was trained only a few months ago. And when he came into our simulation, he was a handsome man, right? Handsome man, and he's got a wife and 2 kids. It's my story anyway. He came into our simulator, didn't know what port and starboard of a boat meant. He was actually trying to pump the brakes with his foot. There's no brakes in a boat. And he knew nothing. And he was designated as the coxswain for a vessel that was leaving from Qatar. And within 4.5 hours of training in our simulator, he was launching a boat into a 6-meter sea, overcoming some equipment faults, and picked up 2 POWs, or people in the water, in 4.5 hours. So to the 6 CNA students who work with us, this is where your work is going. You're helping Joe go back to his family and his wife and his 2 kids. And this is what's keeping us motivated. And if you want to join us on that journey in any way, just come talk to us. And thank you.